Hello, this is Angela with Parkrose Permaculture. Welcome back to Hausfrau Friday. Now, normally I talk about topics related to sustainable living, particularly in terms of how they align with permaculture design philosophy. But today I want to talk about unschooling some more. And that's because you guys have had so many questions about unschooling, and I got such great response to the couple of videos I've already done on the subject. Now, I've talked in the past about how unschooling philosophy really melds very nicely with permaculture design. It also melds really well into the life of our family. It works really well for my children, and it works really well for me as a parent. But it may not work for everybody. And as I've said in the past, I'm not unschooling at you. In fact, my husband is a public education teacher. He's a special ed mathematics teacher. And so we really believe in public education, but I also believe that much like permaculture is site-specific design for your particular yard, your particular household, the needs of your community and your city. Education is also incredibly specific because we are unique individuals. And so for some kids, unschooling really works best. So this is the first in a short 3-part series about what I've learned unschooling teenagers. Now, I have 4 kids. They are about to turn 20, 18, 14, and 11. So I have been now the unschooling parent of 3 teens at the same time. And I see a fair amount of anxiety from other parents who are beginning their unschooling journey or are thinking of unschooling or have a kid who is struggling in junior high or high school, and they are thinking about pulling their child out and exploring deschooling and unschooling. And so I thought I would maybe offer some encouragement and some insight about unschooling teenagers. So I want to talk today about some observations that I've made, some truths I've experienced that have reduced my anxiety and hopefully will reduce yours, because let's be real, if you're unschooling, despite the fact that there's 2.5 million unschooled kids in the US alone, we are a small minority. Even within the homeschooling movement, we can be considered a little bit fringe, especially because much of homeschooling is religious-based. Folks homeschool their kids because they want to remove them from worldly influences, and it kind of could be school of the dining room table, where it's very much the same format as public school, but done with a religious doctrinal base at home. Unschooling is a huge departure from that. And we can start to feel anxious as our kids get older, as they become teenagers. Are they learning everything they need to know? What will happen when they go to college? Will they be able to get into college? What is going on in that transitional period from high schooler since they're unschooled, into college student, or from teen into adult? So those of you that are parenting those late teens into adulthood, I want to offer you some encouragement that your child does not magically flip a switch when they turn 18. And I want to talk about this a lot in my next video. Don't feel the pressure as parents to boot your kid out just because it's what your parents might have done, just because it's what your neighbor might be doing. Those of us that are unschoolers tend to question every institution and cultural expectation that's put on us. And yet I see so many unschooled parents posting like, what do I do when my kid becomes an adult? Will they be ready for adulthood? What is my job as a parent? I don't want to coddle my child. I don't want to delay their maturation, but I also want to support them in the way that I've supported them through their whole childhood and education. I want to encourage you, just because your child has turned 18, your role as an unschooling parent is not over, and your child does not magically stop unschooling. In fact, unschooling is a lifelong journey. And so because we all mature at different rates, when your child turns 18, you don't have to panic that they have to launch off into college. So I hope you'll watch more on my next video, because I want to really unpack that quite a bit more. Don't feel pressure, the pressure that the world puts on you to do things a certain way. You've had lots of experience saying, no, thank you, that doesn't work for our family. And this is another way that you can do that. Feel confident saying, actually, we're going to find our own way, something that works for our whole household, something that works for our child in the context of their life, because they have to live it and we want to support them. One thing I'll say that has taken me a long time and has been difficult for me to embrace unschooling teenagers, because I was such a driven, motivated, people-pleasing child. I was very high functioning and academically successful because I needed that external validation from everybody. I needed folks to see my good grades and say, okay, Angela, you are okay. You are smart. You are good at getting things done on time. I didn't feel that I had worth unless I was getting the academic tasks accomplished and functioning at a very high level. I was always pursuing the honors classes. I was always pursuing the gifted and talented classes. I was taking all the AP classes I could. So for me as a teenager, that was a tremendous amount of pressure, and I was absolutely miserable. The fact that my educational journey was all about getting the good grades and not really about what I was learning and what was meaningful to me meant that I dumped much of what I learned out of my brain as soon as I got an A on my report card. I didn't retain it. So it's been hard for me to watch my kids because they don't have that kind of pressure and motivation put on them. And it causes some anxiety for me, and that's not my kids' fault, and I need to check that. Where is that anxiety coming from? If my kids aren't driven, if I don't see them cracking open a math textbook, if I don't see them feeling highly motivated to dive into academic subjects that I was highly motivated to dive into as a high schooler, are they doing it wrong? One of the things I want to encourage you parents, and that I have learned over the years, if your teen is engaged in something that is meaningful for them, they are learning something that is important, and they need to be learning even if you can't see what it is. Your kid may be building social skills by chatting online with friends or going to a coffee shop. Those social skills are so important, and I was definitely seriously lacking them for a lot of my late teens and early 20s. They might be exploring topics online that you don't know about. A lot of parents can feel really insecure about the amount of time their teenagers spend on screens. There's kind of this big division in the unschooling movement, the like natural crunchy play with seashells and like driftwood and like beautiful silk scarves and like spend all your time drawing with oil pastels. That kind of mimics a little bit of Waldorfness. And I say that with like a little snark, but because I was one of those parents for a long time. And therefore I had a lot of anxiety about letting my kids have, unbridled access to screens. And then I realized very quickly that technology is a wonderful tool. Screens are a wonderful tool, especially for my 2 children with dyslexia. They spend a lot of time on their iPads listening to audiobooks, listening to podcasts, and also using the tools to have their text read out loud to them. Such an important tool for accessibility. And therefore, I don't need to prioritize paper books over audiobooks or over digital media because my kids are still learning and ingesting the information that is meaningful to them, even though the format may kind of like get my hackles up a little bit or may concern me. That's up to me to figure out why it is that I don't like screens as much. Where does that prejudice come from when clearly it's a tool my kids are utilizing? And you may say, well, okay, that's well and good for you if your kids are, using their tablet for, watching Khan Academy videos or for researching some subject at the, Natural History Museum's website. No, man, my kids spend most of the time on tablets playing video games with their friends online. And that's totally fine. I have learned so much from my children about developing social skills and communication, watching them, and the way they do that, especially during the pandemic, playing video games socially online. Like, they have cultivated such healthy communication skills. They look really different than the skills I would have had at their age. They learn how to negotiate and how to work through conflict. They learn how to make alliances and how to craft plans and enact a plan with their teammates when they're playing online. I have seen my kids learn so many things playing video games online that I would have just dismissed that as like entertainment and wasted time had my children not been such excellent teachers to me. My kids are getting something out of that I couldn't understand until they helped explain it to me. I'm also perpetually floored at what my kids will think to learn that would never have occurred to me. They will take their interest and they will chase it all the way down the rabbit hole, much like I do. That's very much how I learn and why I embraced unschooling so much. As teenagers, our kids are developing the skills of how to research online. I mean, my second kid, who is really obsessed with the law and is really into mock trial, I have been floored. She reads legal briefs for fun. She listens to podcasts about the Supreme Court and how knowledgeable she has become about subjects I would never have thought to teach or would never have thought to nudge her toward, right? That's the beauty of unschooling. Our kids can see an interest. They can get a little spark of something and they can say, dang, I'm just going to go whole hog and I am going to embrace everything about this. I'm going to go all the way down that rabbit hole and learn everything. And for teens, it's so much more so. I encourage you, if you are worried about your teenager and how much time they're spending online, unschooling is relational. talk with them about it. Ask them what they're learning. Ask them what they're exploring. My 14-year-old will often come upstairs from his little like boy cave in the basement where he's been gaming with friends, and he will tell me all about something that he decided to explore at 2 a.m. for no reason. He'll come up and tell me all about some, electrical engineering thing he wanted to learn about that was, going to be helpful for his gaming to understand this concept better, and he will just go learn everything about it. Or he'll say, I'm really interested in this thing about evolutionary biology because I'm going to be able to use it in my video gaming. And so he'll just go watch a whole bunch of educational videos and learn massive amounts of information that I would never have thought to teach him. Because he's an unschooler, he knows how to go chase all that information down when he wants to learn it. And because he is exploring it when it's really meaningful to him in the context of his life, in his social life, in what his interests are, he will retain it so much better. Unlike me, he won't dump it after the test. There is no test. There's only meaningful context of his real life that it is folded into. When you need to learn something, it is amazing how fast you can plow through an entire subject and acquire all of that information. Just because it might have taken 2 or 3 years to teach you in public school with a very slow pace and lots of repetition and lots of wasted time and lots of review, when you need to learn it, because it's important to your life and it's important to help you get where you want to go, you can learn it incredibly fast. Now I'm going to cut in here in a second an interview with my eldest kid, Ruth, because this is her pet thing that she talks about with unschooling. She's almost 20, she's a college student, and she never had a formal education. Much of her time was spent drawing and painting, and it shows. She is a prolific and really talented artist, really skilled artist who has practiced endless hours. In fact, I think if she had her druthers, she would spend all of her time divided 4 ways. Outdoors with her poultry, with her houseplant collection, watching Oregon Art Beat, and then the bulk of her time drawing and painting. And yet she's had to learn everything she needs for college. In fact, right now she's taking calculus. Hey Ruth, sorry to interrupt you while you're in the middle of doing art, but I know you had wanted to talk for a few moments about your experience as an unschooler and now college student when it comes to formal education, especially mathematics, and especially the pace at which you can learn subject matter when you need to.
Yeah, so when I started my calculus class that I'm taking right now at PCC, I hadn't really had a proper math class before. I'd taken a high school level algebra class at Mount Hood, but I dropped out partway through the term because it was a little bit below my level, and so I never really finished it.
Mm-hmm.
And
that was a class that you took just so you could see what formal kind of institutional educational classes are like, right?
Yeah.
But then you weren't learning anything because you already knew all of the subject matter, even though you'd never really taken a math class before.
Yeah. I found that the pace of the class moved pretty slow,
Mm-hmm.
and that's helpful for some people, but I just found it to be a very inefficient way of being taught things.
Can you tell us a little bit about what your experience is taking this math class where it maybe was a little bit more advanced than you expected and you had to fill in some gaps?
Yeah, I didn't really know algebra or the prerequisite classes for it going in, so.
But you took a skills assessment, and that's the level they placed you in. Yeah.
Yeah, this is the one that I got placed in. A little bit higher than I had anticipated, and there was a lot of subject matter that I didn't know and that I didn't know I had to know. Probably stuff I would have learned in high school, but also probably not, because a lot of my classmates were also not understanding it. So I basically had to do a lot of catch up, and I basically taught myself like all of high school math in a couple weeks. So I was really struggling at first, but after a couple weeks I kind of taught myself like algebra and geometry and all the prerequisites.
And I know you've told your siblings and your friends, something that would have taken you 3 or 4 years to learn in high school, you basically learned in a matter of weeks when it was really relevant to your life, and you didn't have to do a lot of review or busy work, you just buckled down and learned it because you needed to know it. Yeah.
I mean, I've also gotten comments online from people saying if you had gotten a proper education at high school, then you wouldn't have to do any catch up. But what I replied to them is, if I had gotten that proper education at a public school, that would have taken 4 years of my life to learn all those skills, And most public schoolers I know, they don't retain those skills at all. They just sort of learn it test to test and then forget it after the test.
And I'm not sure that somebody who'd only ever been in public school would necessarily be able to kind of hack their education that way and be able to go and just learn it all themselves that quickly. Like you have a long history of teaching yourself things that you want to know that are relevant to you.
Yeah, public school doesn't really teach people how to like learn things on their own. Like it doesn't teach you how to learn new math skills from scratch. And it doesn't teach you those math skills in a very efficient way. Like it was quite a bit of a struggle to learn all of high school math in 2 weeks, but I still was able to do it, and I'm sure some people could do it even faster than me, because I work quite slowly.
So thanks for sharing your experience with us, Ruth. You are pretty much the top student in your class, right? If not the number one student in your class. So do you feel that being unschooled has made it more difficult for you to plug into a formal college setting, or do you feel like you're doing just fine?
I think I'm doing pretty well.
Okay, thanks, Ruth. Thanks for sharing your experience with us. I'll let you get back to your painting.
No problem.
And I think that's something we as unschooled parents need to be reminded of. The pace of when things happen in public school is often because we're trying to shoehorn kids into a subject they're not really ready to learn developmentally or interest-wise. And when they are unschooled, they attack those subjects, they tackle them, they absorb them when they are developmentally more capable of absorbing and processing and mastering that information quickly. And also, again, will retain it because it is applicable to their real life. Thank you for watching today. I hope you'll tune back into parts 2, 3, and 4 of this series as I dive a little bit more into unschooling and how it has worked as a really sustainable educational model for our family of 6. Thanks.